Well was an ugly, useless poor child, who accidentally awakened the galactic god's powers to erase the existence of humanity, but kept hiding his abilities to appear ordinary. His family were the brokies Andrew Tate warned you about, as his only meals were a piece of bread with rotten soup. And although their entertainment was counting the shit stains on their disgusting walls, he was glad that he finally had a family, because in his previous life, he never had anyone to come home to, and even though he was able to cook any meal he wanted, the loneliness kept eating away at him, until he choked on his meat and died from the depression. So when all his brothers abandoned him for being the ugliest piece of shit, he spent the rest of his life reading the ancient texts, until he found a mysterious ball that could measure his magical aptitude. But when he decided to try using his powers, the orb glowed with a shimmering light, and a man sensed his magical energy from the enchanted forest. However, Will began searching through the library for a guidebook. But when his disgusting father appeared, he told him to stop being useless and collect firewood from the forest. So when he arrived, he tried channeling his inner mana to release his ultimate ability. With his attempts having flopped harder than his pathetic face, the man appeared before his eyes. But when he realized Well was afraid, he threw his stick away, introducing himself as a magician. However, the magical weight within the stick pulled down a rock, but when they stared down from the cliff, they realized it fell on top of a boar. Just as it noticed them, the beast began charging up the mountain. But as Well tried running away, the man told him to picture his wind magic, and to circulate the mana through his body. So just before he was crushed, Well released a burst of mana, but as the boar shrugged it off, the man told Well that he just used his first magical spell. However, when the beast charged again, he propelled a strong wind that sent it flying through the trees, before revealing that his name was Alfred Reincarnated, and told Well that he would turn him into the greatest magician of their continent. The next day, Well realized they were having cream for breakfast, but when he wondered if this shit was a post-meal, his mother said they had nothing else to eat. So after he returned to the forest, Well realized it was starting to feel more like home, but noticed Alfred's magical pouch. When Alfred began saying that he wanted to pass his magic on to him, he activated his mana and manipulated the wind to levitate the stick, before revealing that he was going to make Well his disciple, but warned him to keep it a secret, as his powers would spark a succession war with his brothers. So he took Well's hands, but as he noticed they were cold as ice, Alfred told him to imagine mana circulating through their bodies. As he began to picture it, their combined mana released a colorful energy around them. So Alfred told him that he was special, because even though he was ugly, he would surpass his magical abilities. Meanwhile at the house, Richard found the crystal ball. But when the disgusting loser Kurt wondered what was wrong, Richard explained that the ball was moved. As he remembered Well had been in the library, he wondered if the ugly kid was hoping to have aptitude for magic. But they began laughing at how useless he was. All the while, Well was starting to grasp fire magic. But when Alfred wondered how he was able to learn it within a few days, Well noticed his basket, revealing that it contained mountain vegetables. Alfred told him that he could take it to his family, and said it would help him avoid suspicion. That night at his home, his family was excited to eat some veggies instead of the shit they're used to choking down. But Kurt realized Well was going to be a threat. The next day, while Alfred was teaching Well to use advanced wind magic, he told him to sense the vibrations in the air around him. But when the nuisance sensed a bird, he threw down a rock. Drawing in his mana, Well released it into the air, manipulating the wind to propel the rock, until it knocked down the bird. The only way he learned how to master control of his magic was by spending hours practicing, while playing the sponsor of today's video, Silver and Blood Requiem, the greatest gothic-themed strategy RPG game ever made. Because with its polished anime art style visuals, you would delve into the eternal struggle of life versus death, carving your own legend into a world teetering on the edge of chaos. On the continent of Minxis, there are 3 distinct bloodline powers: Black Blood, Silver Blood, and Red Blood. Each bloodline is represented by a different faction. The Mountain-blessed vampires, led by the protagonist Noah, the Tempest Church, guardians of time and order, and ordinary humans, who carry the red blood. As the protagonist sets out on a journey to find the Mountain-blessed, they begin to uncover hidden calamities, and the mysterious way to awaken their true potential, the Covenant. Its gripping storyline is filled with the most unexpected twists and turns I've ever experienced, especially as I played through dark forests, abandoned castles, and felt the eerie qualities of gothic fiction like the legends of Dracula. With over 50 mysterious characters across 4 factions, you can strengthen their blood power through equipment, skills, and spirit siphon to forge your own unique moon-blessed lineup, with some of the best voiceovers and music compositions ever made. On launch day, there will be plenty of in-game events and generous resource giveaways, so pulling 2 SSR characters is basically guaranteed. And you can even get 2 more SSRs from pre-registration rewards and community events. Like me, you will be blown away by the strategic gameplay and stunning graphics in this beautifully rendered 2D world. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in my description or scan the QR code to download Silver and Blood Requiem, and you'll become a badass protagonist that isn't an ugly, worthless failure in 2 lifetimes like Well's disgusting face. A few minutes later, they began eating grilled meat, but as Alfred warned him to never go deep inside the forest, he said it was filled with monsters that could end his life. However, when Well remembered that Kurt had been spying on him, he began wondering how he could get him off his tail. But Alfred told him that the loser must have discovered he could use magic. With Well starting to freak out, Alfred wondered if he was willing to become the next Lord. But Well told him that he couldn't stand Kurt's ugly face. However, when he revealed that he wasn't sure what to do with his worthless life, Alfred suggested he become an adventurer, and said the whole world was waiting for him. At that moment, darkness began consuming his body, but he managed to hold himself together, hoping to finish what he had started. That night, after Well told his family that he wanted to become an adventurer, he explained that he wished to enroll at the academy after he turned 12. But even though the ugly bastard was happy to hear this, Richard told him that they were too broke to afford it. However, the following day, Alfred told him that he could work as an adventurer in Breitberg, explaining that children were hired as adventurers by merchant guilds, but said he needed to master traveling magic. Wanting to show off, Alfred activated his mana and took off towards the skies, rising high until he was beyond the clouds, and told Well that this was the world awaiting him. However, that night, the darkness returned to consume him, and Alfred realized he ran out of time. So a few days later, he told Well that their training was coming to an end. But as Well wondered why it was so sudden, seeing as he only started practicing flight magic, Alfred told him to practice on his own. That night, while having dinner, Richard began saying that a whispering dead was spotted in the woods, an undead that retained its cognitive powers, but was always cold as ice, with skin pale as a corpse. At that moment, Well realized Alfred perfectly matched that description. But Richard continued by saying that the undead would eventually become a zombie that feasts on people. As these words scared the shit out of him, Well headed into the forest, but lost control as he crashed down. However, Alfred appeared before his eyes, wondering why he came, but Well began saying that a monster was inside the forest, and asked him to run to his home. With his attempt being as useless as his face, Alfred decided to confess that he was the Whispering Dead. And even though Well wouldn't accept that as the truth, Alfred told him that it happened 5 years ago. The Duke's son had contracted a deadly illness, forcing them to invade the enchanted forest for a cure. But when their army was outnumbered by monsters, even he was overwhelmed after running out of mana. However, he managed to live on because he had a strong desire to pass on his knowledge to a disciple. So he told Well that he was happy when he sensed his presence. Wanting to give him a final test, Alfred asked that he purge him, and said he would teach him holy magic. This holy magic was the only spell that could purge a whispering dead, so as he showed him the darkness that was consuming his body, he explained that he couldn't continue to preserve himself. Before he would become a zombie, he told Well to replicate his life force using mana, but as he began releasing his magical powers, the darkness overwhelmed Alfred. However, he told Well to increase his essence, but when he was afraid of erasing his master's existence, Alfred told him to remember everything he'd learned. As the memories flashed through their minds, Alfred asked him to put him out of his misery, so as Well decided on what to do. He thanked his master for everything. With his master's final words instructing him to do his best and do it smartly, Well thought he knew just what to do. So a few years later, he began heading to the capital, and as he waved his family goodbye, He knew he was about to start a new life and change his world forever. After he arrived at the academy, the students started introducing themselves, but Well wondered how he would cope after being in solitude all his life. Having never communicated with anyone his age, he thought all his classmates would outcast him, but as the teacher told him to introduce himself, his happy-go-lucky ass tried putting energy into every single word. And as all the students began staring at him, he realized he was clapped harder than his worthless face. But the teacher decided to explain the curriculum for the scholarship class. After Well received a party registration form, the teacher announced that they would begin training in parties from next month, but told them to decide on who will be joining up with them. Just as Well heard these words, he realized he needed to find a group, but knew no one would want his pathetic ass. Later at the cafeteria, Well realized that the other students were staying away from him, but Lena and Louise were secretly watching him. They had heard that his magic power was already on par with top-class adventurers, and a boy told them that even the magic instructor couldn't figure out anything to teach him. However, he thought they would be set for life if they could form a party with him, since they could remain together even after leaving the academy. At the same time, the other students began eyeing Well, so the boy proposed forming a group with him. He thought Well was appraising them and trying to decide if they were worthy of him, and just as the brain-dead chicks believed his words, he managed to persuade them to join his group. After they agreed, the boy introduced himself as Erwin, but Well was still trying to muster courage. As an ugly kid tried to shoot his shot at Louise and Lena, he told them that even though he looked small, his axe was big enough for both of them. However, he was convinced that his group would win Well over and recognize them as the Axe Trio, but Well wondered why everyone was having fun without him. A few days later, while the students were exchanging their game for cash at the guild, Lena, Louise, and Erwin were proud of their catch. However, when Well arrived, he extracted several beasts from his magic bag, and as the blue-haired wannabe ninja realized they were hopeless at impressing Well, he announced that he was giving up, as he thought Well was living in a whole different world. At the same time, the others decided to leave, so when Well tried suggesting they all grab something to eat, he realized the place was empty. The following day, Erwin, Louise, and Lena headed deep into the forest in search of game. But as Lena began sensing the presence of beasts, large wolves appeared from the bushes. Immediately, they readied their weapons, but Well was scouting the forest from a cliff, and soon realized they were in danger. Realizing they were his useless classmates, Well thought this was his chance to make them his friends, so as he activated his flying spell, he took off towards the forest. Meanwhile, Lena and the others were fending off the wolves, but as they realized they were outnumbered, Erwin saved Louise from an attack, but injured his shoulder protecting her. Just as the wolves attacked at the same time, Well summoned large rocks to repel them, and they saw him floating mid-air. After they returned to the academy, they apologized for being a nuisance, and Erwin revealed that they were trying to get him to recognize them. As Louise concluded that they were definitely not in his league, she told him that they were giving up on forming a party with him. But Lena wished she could see his sword even once. At that moment, the teacher entered the room and told them that they were all being invited to a garden party hosted by the Duke of Bleichroder. However, after they arrived at the party, the Duke ignored all of their worthless faces and went on to introduce himself to Well, saying that his name was Amadeus. As he explained that he intended to speak with him privately, Well asked that Erwin, Louise, and Lena come along as his party members, but the trio were stunned by this. After they arrived inside, Amadeus introduced an older man as his court magician, and the man told him that his name was Brantak. As Amadeus began saying that he was Alfred's teacher, he explained that he was also a talented user of tracking magic. So Brantak revealed that he knew Alfred was a whispering dead, but said his presence disappeared 2 years ago. He was curious to know if Alfred passed on after fulfilling his wish to teach his magic to someone, and having recognized Well's immense magic power, he noticed he was carrying Alfred's magic bag. As he asked Well if he was really Alfred's disciple, Well confessed that he was, so Brantak wondered what his final moments were like. Recalling the memory, Well revealed that he purged him before he became a zombie, so Brantak thanked him for allowing Alfred to pass on peacefully. As Well revealed that the magic bag contained the supplies for the expedition into the enchanted forest, he told them that he had been wanting to return it. That evening, after the party was over, Well rushed to join Erwin and the girls, so as he explained that he was handing over the supplies, Lena told him that they didn't deserve to be in a party with him. As Erwin admitted that they intended to use him to improve their lives, Well revealed that he was also using them, and wondered if they ever looked in the mirror. He told them that he intentionally dragged them along because he didn't wish to go alone with the Duke, but as he admitted that he really wanted to be in their group, He said they were his only hope to not die a virgin again. Right then, Amadeus and Brantag showed up, and as the Duke told Well that his reward for returning the supplies was to get 20% of its value, he told him that he would be sending 1,000 gold coins to him. Realizing it was estimated at $100 million, Well screamed at the discovery, but Brantag went on to tell him that he would be inheriting Alfred's estate. A few weeks later, while Well and his friends were sailing through the sky to attend a wedding ceremony, Louise appeared in a flashy dress. As she went on to say that all the nobles would try to employ her once they spotted her, Well told her that the only thing they would get her was mouthwash.
Emotional damage!
Just as the loudmouth tried to walk, she tripped, but discovered that Erwin was in a far worse state, as the crybaby began saying that he was afraid the airship would fall. However, Brantag soon appeared, revealing that the magic airship couldn't fall out of the sky. But at that moment, thick clouds began gathering around their ship, and all of them were scared the ship would fall out of the sky.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
When Brantag revealed that he couldn't beat it, he explained that it was an undead, and said it could only be killed by purging it with holy magic. However, he couldn't use holy magic, but when the crew began growing restless, he told them that there was another mage on board, and Well soon realized he was referring to him. As he freaked out, he tried saying that he couldn't do it, but Brantag said that Alfred would have easily taken care of it. Somehow, these words gave him the confidence he needed, so as Well readied himself to head out, Brantag told him to purge the dragon immediately. Just as he flew outside, the dragon repelled him with thick mist that consumed the trees below, but Well realized that Brantag had cast a protective barrier over the ship. So as he drew in his magic, he directed his mana towards the dragon, but it nearly ended his life. As he decided to make another attempt, the dragon tried to eat him, but Well continued gathering his mana. So as he released it, his mana pushed through the thick mist, overwhelming the undead dragon. However, it managed to land a series of attacks, but as the mana consumed it, the bones began falling apart. As Brantag directed him to collect the bones into his bag, Well absorbed them, but soon spotted a huge gemstone. After it was over, all the passengers began to celebrate the victory, but a man with a fat-ass face appeared, saying that he watched from afar how Well defeated the dragon. His name was Eritirio, so as Brantag revealed that he was one of his partners from the time he was an adventurer. He explained that the buffoon was now the head of a huge merchant company in the capital. After they arrived at the capital the next day, Erwin suggested they enjoy the town before the wedding began. But when Brantag told them that he needed to attend to grown-up stuff, Eritirio realized he had intentionally left him in charge of the kids. Right then, an army of knights appeared before them. But as Erwin wondered if his bad luck had gotten them into trouble, the general acknowledged Well for slaying the undead dragon. As he revealed that the king was waiting to see him, Well soon discovered that the palace was huge. However, his friends decided to ditch him, and Louise hoped that his useless face wouldn't get them into trouble. Inside the palace, a man welcomed him as the slayer of the ancient dragon. But after he paid his respect, the king granted him the 6th rank of baronet, so Well recited a pledge he had previously memorized. A few minutes later, 2 shameless morons began screaming that Well should receive 100,000 coins for his dragon bones, while the other said he deserved 200,000 coins. However, a man named Hohenheim suggested a compromise of 150,000 coins, explaining that Well was the center of attention in the capital. He thought their pointless argument was only an embarrassment to the king. So as he managed to shut them up, Eritirio revealed that the useless old man was actually trying to bring him under the church's influence, but said the others also had their own motive. That evening, after they left the palace, as Eritirio explained that he was trying to get him to hire him as a disciple, he reminded him that he was now a noble with a bright future, and revealed that the twin dragon medal he received had not been earned in 2 centuries. So just as the loser was taken away, Eritirio told Well to expect more losers like him around, and called it the price of fame. The following day, Well met up with his brothers, but when he noticed they weren't happy, Erich told him that they had not received the wedding gifts from their family, and Paul said they were about to have the worst wedding of the century. As Helmut revealed Kurt's letter, Well realized his family were still brokies, so he offered to pay for everything since he was now the top G. A few hours later, the wedding concluded, and Well was happy that they managed to get the wedding gifts. After the ceremony was over, Eritirio showed up with a comb kuji, and as the sight of it made Well excited, he realized it was something he had always wanted. So that night, he and his friends began trying to use it in fermenting miso, and Well used his magic to complete the process. So in the morning, when he made it as breakfast for everyone, they all loved the taste of it. A few days later, after Well arrived at Hohenheim's mansion for baptism, he decided to present him with a gift to express his gratitude for allowing him to partake in it. However, when a girl entered the room, Hohenheim introduced her as his granddaughter, so she revealed that her name was Elise. This was the first time Well ever saw her, so as he told her his ridiculously long name, he soon realized she possessed magic power, so Hohenheim revealed that she could use holy healing magic. With the power known for its rarity, Well told her that she was incredible, and wondered if she healed people in the church. As Hohenheim said that she did, he revealed that she was revered as the saint. When Hohenheim went on to say that he wanted her to be married like every other regular girl, Well began wondering if he could join her long list of suitors.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
When Well tried explaining that he was only f***ing around, he realized that he really did f*** himself, but at least Elise would be the one doing all the f***. The next day, after he explained what happened to his friends, Erwin thought he was the toppest of the top G's for getting engaged to the saint, and Louise told him that the girl was perfect for him. However, Well was disappointed that he got engaged so fast, having always wanted a harem of chicks for himself, but tried explaining that he barely knew the girl. When Lena told him that it was the same with everyone, Henrik revealed that everyone else met their wives on the day they wedded, but the discovery left Well speechless. A few hours later, after he was disguised as a creepy clown, he noticed everyone was staring at his haunted face. So when he wondered why he was given a crappy-ass disguise, Erwin explained that it was the only way to keep him unnoticed. When they began heading towards the market, Well noticed the spear loser he earlier ran into, but as he was afraid that the weirdo would recognize him, the moron actually did. He told Well that he remembered his teeth, but when he tried asking the buffoon to not reveal his identity, everyone soon noticed and began asking to be made his disciple.
You're a victim!
Back at the mansion, Henrik suggested that Well hire a disciple to turn down the other ass pains, so as Erwin offered himself up for the position, Well agreed without much thought. Later that day, he teleported to Hohenheim's mansion, but when he spotted the man inside, he managed to hide away. However, Elise found him hiding, but as she wondered why his creepy ass face was here, Well pulled her away. While they were on the roof, he told her that he wanted to talk with her, and asked what she really thought about their sudden engagement. Elise told him that it was nice, and said that every girl would be curious to know just how huge his Excalibur was. As she went on to say that his heroics were legendary, she told him that she was happy to be the wife of such a man, so Well was glad that his disgusting face wouldn't scare off the chick. That night, after Erwin revealed the news of being Well's disciple, the girls realized that the melon head had swooped up their opportunity, so when they tried saying that they wanted to become his assistant, Erwin told them to jump off a cliff. However, when Erich and his wife appeared, their lovey-dovey act gave Louise the perfect ideas she needed, so she told Lena that they could become Well's concubines. Just then, Well entered the house, so Louise suggested they commence their Operation Concubine Seduction. The following night, Well took Elise to a jewelry store, knowing he needed to get his chicken engagement ring. But when he asked how much they were, the clerk told him that they cost about 50 gold coins. Knowing it was estimated at 20 grand, Well wondered why they looked so attractive yet unrefined. But as Elise began saying that he didn't have to buy her something expensive, Well told her not to worry about it. Just then, he noticed a glittering ring, and as he offered to take it, he wondered how much it was. So the clerk revealed that it was 300 gold coins. Realizing it was estimated at more than $100,000, Well knew it was only a matter of time before his ass went broke, but decided to buy it anyway. While they were returning to Hohenheim's mansion, Elise wondered if he bought the ring because it had a magic stone, explaining that it was capable of storing great magic power, but Well told her that he had no idea. He explained that he only chose it because it looked good on her, so as he revealed that he had been feeling the pressure of suddenly being called a hero, he told her that he wasn't even that brave. He could only wonder how she managed to cope with being called a saint, but as he remembered that the ring could store magic, he decided to give it a try. At that moment, it began glowing with a red light, and as it released a beam that revealed the solar system, Well thought it was incredible. The following week, while Erwin and the girls were having lunch, Elise showed up at the house, wondering if they could tell her what kind of man Well was. Meanwhile, Well was at the palace, and as the king asked if he could help them slay a dragon, he accepted without a thought. So as a knight began explaining the mission, he revealed that their destination was the territory of an ancient dragon. Hearing that, Brantag realized that their duty was to eliminate the dragon, so the knight revealed that only a magician could withstand a dragon's breath. When Well wondered how only 2 of them would take on a dragon, Brock burst into the palace, and Brantag realized he was the 3rd magician. As Brock spotted Well, he recognized him as the hero who slew the bone dragon, but his huge hand nearly tore down Well's shoulder. As he bowed before the king, he told him that they would set off immediately, but as he began oozing with a flaming aura, Well wondered if he was truly a magician or a misplaced wrestler. Brantag affirmed that he was the palace magician, and revealed that his name was Armstrong, but everyone called him Brock. As they flew towards the dragon territory, Well noticed that the muscle brain was fast, but Brock revealed that they were heading to the military garrison on the border. At the same time, Henrik was telling Well's friends that he had left to slay a dragon, but when Lena wondered if he went solo, Henrik told her that he formed a temporary army. Right then, they started hearing a loser's voice from outside the gates, and as they discovered it was the same spear buffoon, Louise wondered if they would be a part of Well's army. Henrik said that they would, and revealed that Erwin would be temporarily in charge of them until Well returned. Hearing those words, Erwin began freaking out and said he couldn't take command, but Lena told him to suck it up, while Louise told him that no one expected anything from his sorry ass anyway.
Damn!
However, by the following day, Erwin managed to lead them into battle. But while the sun was still coming up, Brantag, Well and Brock arrived at the dragon's den, so as Brock screamed for the battle to begin, the dragon emerged outside. Its roar made Well scream in fear, but Brock began casting magic armor spells, boosting his strength with full armor. Just as he launched towards the dragon, he managed to knock it on the head, so as Well realized his spell converted magic power into physical objects. Brantag explained that its defensive strength was greater than a magic barrier. So as Brock flung the dragon into the ground, Well began gathering his mana, but Brantag told him that Brock would soon run out of magic power. However, he managed to fling the dragon again, and as he told Well to end it, he released his mana and overwhelmed the beast. After it was killed, Brantag told Well to collect its body, so as he absorbed it into his magic bag. Brantag told him that he could make a fortune selling the dragon's parts. However, when Well began thinking it was over, Brock told him that the battle was only just beginning. But when Well wondered if their next enemies were weaker, Brantag told him that they had the numbers advantage. Outside the battle zone, Elise and other nurses were treating injured soldiers, but as they were running out of magic, Elise decided to help out. However, more wounded soldiers continued to appear, and as they revealed that the front line was chaotic, they admitted that they were only holding out because of the mages. By the next day, the tents were filled up with more wounded soldiers, but as Elise was beginning to run out of magic, she decided to use the magic stored inside her ring. By the time it was dark, she was completely exhausted, but when a nameless loser found her, he told her that she was lucky to get engaged to Well. When Elise wondered if he was safe, he told her that he was, and revealed that Well was fighting on the front line, calling him a true hero. As more days passed, Elise was totally drained, and even her ring soon ran out of magic, but she asked for medical tools to continue treating the soldier. Just then, a knight announced that the troops were returning from the front line, and revealed that they won. But as another appeared, saying that Well was injured and needed treatment, Elise began rushing to find him. However, she discovered that he was perfectly fine, and as she was relieved to see him, her exhaustion made her pass out. When she woke up a few hours later, Well told her that he heard stories about her on the front line, and as he said that all the soldiers admired her as the saint, he told her that he couldn't wait to be baptized in her juice.
What do you mean by that?
After they returned to the mansion, they began trying to redecorate the place, but when Elise arrived, Louise wondered why the bitch was determined to take their man away, and thought it was the end of their Operation Concubine Seduction. However, when Elise decided to ask Well if he was engaged to both of them, Well wondered if she wanted him to have concubines. When she told him that it was perfectly normal, Louise and Lena realized their opportunity, and announced their intention to marry him, so as Well agreed, he knew deep down that he was f***ed. A few weeks later, Helmut also married into a knightdom, but Paul told Well that they were only getting a wife because every girl wished to become his relative. Without his influence, he thought none of them would ever get a girl, and told him that he needed to be ready for the tournament. When Well wondered what that was, Henrik explained that it was a martial arts tournament the kingdom hosted once every 3 years, and told him that all nobles were supposed to participate. However, there were no mage divisions, so Paul told Well that he would be in the swordsmanship division, as he revealed that the use of magic was forbidden. At the mansion, Brantag was telling Erwin and the girls about the tournament, and he thought they would be respected by everyone if they managed to make it through the preliminaries. So as Louise and Lena thought they had a chance, they left to commence training. But when Erwin continued dawdling, Brantag wondered why his lazy ass wasn't up yet, so Erwin told him that he had nothing to lose. However, Brantag thought his fat ass had everything to lose, and told him that he could be kicked out of his adventuring party for being useless baggage. But the thought scared the shit out of him. That night, when Well announced that he would be entering the tournament, he told them that the last winner of the past 2 tournaments wouldn't be participating. But as Louise began saying that they would certainly win, Well told her that no one with the size of her tits would ever win anything.
Yo, that one there was a violation. Personally, I wouldn't have it.
As he went on to reveal that he had something important to discuss with them, he wondered if they would allow Elise to join their party. But Erwin was glad that he wasn't getting kicked out. At the same time, Louise and Lena were excited to add a healer to their group. And even though Lena wished the bitch wasn't after their man, she told them that she'd be very useful. With Erwin in support, Well began revealing that he would focus on the martial arts tournament, and as he admitted that he wanted to save himself from getting embarrassed, Erwin declared that he would win it. So early the following day, he started running a marathon, but with the girls already exhausted, Well barely kept up the pace. When they moved on to pull-ups, Erwin outmatched them, and after they advanced to the weapon training, Well began swinging his sword like a sickly ugly girl, but Erwin wouldn't stop. Even at nighttime, after Well's lazy ass already retired to his bed, the others continued to train. But as Erwin persisted till sunrise, he noticed that his hand was injured. However, that day during lunch, after Well told them that the winner of the last 2 tournaments would be participating, the news left them all speechless. So that night, Erwin tried asking Well if he would remove him from the party for failing to win the tournament, as the thought was increasingly making him anxious. However, when he realized that Well was actually asleep, he decided to shake the weakling awake. Hoping to save his blushes, Well began saying that he was waiting for Elise, and revealed that she was anxious about joining their party as she thought she was too useless. Just as Erwin heard these words, it managed to stir up his determination once again, as he realized he wasn't the only one afraid, and said he would win the tournament. On the day the tournament began, Brantag and Brock stayed at the VIP section, so while the girls were warming up, Elise arrived with their lunch. By the time the preliminaries began, Well discovered that his opponent was Warren, the winner of the last 2 tournaments. He knew he couldn't possibly have worse luck, but as he drew his sword anyway, he thought he had no other choice but to fight. However, just as the fight began, Warren jabbed him in the gut, knocking him unconscious before he even knew it. When it was Erwin's turn to fight, he rushed at his opponent, parrying his sword and forcing him to surrender. At the same time, the first side chick won her round, but by the time she rejoined Well, she told him that she lost in the semi-final round. But Brantag told her that she was still better than Well's pathetic ass. Meanwhile, Lena was in the final round of the preliminaries, but as she realized that her opponent was the spear buffoon, the dude recognized her as Well's party member. Thinking it was his chance to impress, he took a step forward, and as he jabbed at her spear a dozen times, he parried her attack and knocked off her weapon. Before long, she rejoined the others, explaining how she lost, but when she noticed that Well was asleep, Elise told them that he didn't get any sleep the previous night, and revealed that he actually spent all of that time making their lunch. Meanwhile, Erwin had won his final preliminary match, but as his arm began to hurt, he noticed that Warren had easily defeated his own opponent, and he told him that he was looking forward to their match. However, when Erwin returned to the locker room, a man tried persuading him to forfeit the fight, but Erwin told him that he already promised to win. He told them that it would be impossible to remain a member of the party if he continued to be a loser. But as Lena figured out where his insecurity was coming from, she told him to check his lunch box. Deciding to do so, Erwin realized that Well had left a friendly note, so as he figured out the perfect thing to do, he headed off to fight anyway. A few years later at Well's village, Kurt's family joined him on the farm, and his wife told him that he had a visitor, revealing that they wished to speak about Well. Just as he heard that name, Kurt grew angry, so after returning home, the visitor delivered a letter to him. Thinking it was nothing relevant, the beanhead gave it away to his wife and began saying that he wasn't concerned about Well's fame. But just as she read it, she told Kurt that Well passed away while exploring ancient ruins. A few days earlier, Well was still alive in the city, and as he noticed he was becoming an adult, he thought it was only a matter of time before he began to develop plot. At the same time, the rest of his party members were excited at finally becoming adventurers. But when Well began saying that they'd gained the freedom they always wanted, Brantag appeared at that moment, revealing that they've been requested to explore some ancient ruins. It was a mandatory quest from the king, so as Brantag told him that he couldn't turn it down, Well realized he was still the same servant he always was. The next day, after they arrived at the ruins, Brantag led the group into the underground, explaining that several adventurers had gone missing after heading down here. He said that the guild had realized just how dangerous the ruin was, so as Elise figured that the only severe danger would be the presence of a dragon. Brantag told them that they were sent as a peace offering. Since the morons all agreed on naming their group the Dragon Busters, Brantag thought it only made sense that a dragon busted on their ass.
Pause.
At that moment, Well realized that the entire party were queued up right behind him, but Erwin told him that it was the only way they could save themselves from a dragon's breath. However, Brantag told them that there were no dragons close by, and as he revealed that he had cast a detection spell, he said he wasn't sensing any enemies. Just then, Lena noticed a huge door, so as they entered, walking into the circle, Brantag sensed danger. When he tried telling them to run away, they realized the doors had closed, so as a spell trapped them inside. Gluing their feet to the floor, they began disappearing one after another. Just as Well tried to hold his girl, he also vanished, but Elise soon followed. By the time she woke up, she realized she was back with the others, but Well noticed the strange writing on the wall. When Brantag explained that it was an ancient trap that used magic to teleport victims to the bottom floor, they noticed a flight of stairs and realized that climbing up was their only option. Just as they got to the top, they entered a huge chamber, and as they noticed an army of golems, the door sealed them inside, so as Well realized they were trapped, the army came awake. Just as Well tried to unleash his magic, Erwin covered him, telling him to step back, and Lena told him to conserve his magic, while Louise assured him that they could hold their own. So as they attacked, cutting down the golems, Lena destroyed half a dozen, while Louise continued bashing them. At the same time, Brantag protected Erwin with a wall of wind, and directed Well to support them by using wind magic to limit the golems' movement. As Lena destroyed a line of golems, Louise released magic shockwaves to pulverize them, while Erwin sliced through the ranks. With all the golems destroyed, Elise began replenishing Lena's mana, but as Lena noticed skeletons, Brantag revealed that they were the adventurers who were sent to explore the place. At that moment, Louise spotted a new army of golems, and as she warned the others, they went off to battle. Meanwhile in the palace, the king was worried that they had been gone for 5 days, and he wondered why rumors were spreading about their demise. At the same time, the fat disgusting pig responsible for the rumors was telling his useless servant to give Kurt the letter, and to encourage him to have his sons come up as Well's successors, as he hoped that Well was really dead. Meanwhile in the underground, Well's party were still battling the golems, but as Well was already exhausted, he soon passed out on Elise's shoulder. By the time they moved up the stairs, they continued the battles, and even though they were drained, they managed to hold up, but Elise noticed that Well was nearly out of breath. After they made it to the final chamber, they noticed it was empty, but as Erwin was excited, the dragon golem woke up, but Brantag cast a barrier to protect them. Just as Well supported him, a golem pierced Lena from behind, so as light filled up the room, the dragon intensified its attack. At the same time, Elise was trying to heal Lena, but as her magic ran out, she decided to draw magic from her ring, determined to save her. When Brantag realized they were hopeless playing defense, he told Well that things would only get worse. So when Well realized that Lena had recovered, he told Brantag that they needed to destroy the dragon. Even though its body was made out of mithril, he thought they could kill it by concentrating their remaining magic. So as Brantag decided to channel his magic into him, the barrier began expanding. But Brantag grew exhausted. However, he saw the spirit of Alfred inside Well, so as Well continued overpowering the dragon's breath, his magic grew thinner, and he knew he couldn't keep up. As Elise appeared for support, she told him that her spell was called Miracle's Light. But just as she passed out, Well increased his mana to overpower the dragon's breath. and as he shrunk it, he pierced through the dragon's head, killing it instantly. Right then, the golem stopped moving, but Well also passed out from fatigue. A few hours later, when he woke up, he realized that the two ugliest bitches were talking about his kiss, but as Erwin summoned them, Well realized that Elise was still asleep. When they met Brantag told them that the underground was created by a count who was a leading creator of magic items, and said that its purpose was to test people's talent to figure out if they were worthy of his legacy. Just then, Louise summoned them, so as they saw a fleet of ancient airships, Erwin pulled a lever to open the exit, and Elise was glad that they managed to make it. After they returned to the palace, a man began to read a list of the items they found, but as he revealed that their reward was 2 million gold coins, the group stared in shock. However, after they'd returned to the mansion, Well told Brock that they were leaving the capital because his face had brought them nothing but bad luck. Knowing he would be missed, Brock began saying that he would spend the rest of his time investigating the peddler of the false claims of his death. But Well wondered what the fuck was going on. Meanwhile, the ugly dickhead named Ruckner was in a meeting with 4 other losers, and as they wondered if Well's survival ruined his plan, Ruckner told them that his true plan was always to bring them together for a bigger plan. Back in the mansion, Well and his friends were having lunch, but when a girl began spying on them from outside, Well sensed her presence. So as he told his friends that he wanted to have someone watch over the mansion, Lena suggested they hire someone strong and loyal who wasn't a creep. When Louise thought they would never find one, Lena figured out the perfect person and said he was the spear buffoon. So as the others agreed, they revealed that his name was Rodrich. Before long, they invited the loser over, and Well wondered if he was still interested in working for him. But as the nuisance began to cry, he told Well that it was the happiest day of his meaningless life. As Lena and Louise began having second thoughts, Well noticed the girl again, but by the time the others tried to find her, they realized she had vanished. The next day, Well and his friends arrived at the capital's research lab, so as the head researcher introduced himself as Lucas, Well asked if he had a rumored magic circle that could summon anything the user imagined. As Lucas said that he did, he explained that it was still a prototype, and revealed that it would require a great amount of magic power. Wanting to give it a shot anyway, Well stepped into the circle, so Lucas told him to visualize what he wanted to summon.
Sensational.
Lucas was impressed that he managed to summon a girl's underwear, and knew that dragons were not the only things he slayed at night, so Erwin thought being a perv ran in the family. As Well decided to make a second attempt, the girls tried to protect their underwear, but Well was excited that he managed to summon something else. However, when they began leaving the research lab, the pink-haired girl continued spying on them, and as she thought they were up to no good, they teleported instantly. So that day, she decided to snoop around the mansion, but noticed that they were having a party. When Well appeared, and revealed that he used the research lab's magic circle to summon a catch from the Northern Sea, he told them that it was called tuna. Just as they decided to have a taste, they thought his tuna was delicious, but the sight was making the pink-haired girl climax. A few minutes later, Rodrich began telling Well that he'd found the culprit spreading rumors of his death, and revealed that it was Ruckner. As he went on to explain that the useless man was the Lord Commissioner's brother, he told Well that he was only using him to unseat his brother, and further revealed that he had dispatched a messenger to his home. He thought they could catch him, but said he already took measures to silence him. So that night, a man told Ruckner that the entire city was suspecting him of a conspiracy to eliminate Well. And just as he wondered how that was possible, a wretched hag who was his wife told him that he was being summoned by the king. At the same time, Rodrich was telling Well that he was responsible for the rumors, and he was certain that it would make Ruckner face some degree of investigation. Even though he wouldn't be punished, Rodrich hoped that the fatso would learn a lesson. All the while, the pink-haired bitch was still spying from outside, but as she couldn't take it anymore, she broke down the door. As she began walking towards Well, Erwin tried to stop her, but she easily hurled him aside. So as she rushed towards Well, he thought she'd attack him, but she began eating his meat. Right then, a man arrived, and told them that her name was Wilma, revealing that she was his daughter. The man was the Lord Marshal, so when he asked the girl what she thought about Well, Wilma revealed that she had been spying on him because she needed to be certain that he could feed her, and told him that he passed. While Well was trying to make sense of her words, the ugly glutton began asking Elise for fatty tuna, so the Lord Marshal revealed that his daughter only cared about food. As Brantag revealed that it was the hero syndrome, He explained that magic was constantly running through her muscles and enhancing her body every time, so the Lord Marshal told him that eating all the time was the only way to replenish her energy. However, when he asked Well if he was willing to take her on as a bodyguard, or would even add her to his harem, Well tried saying that his daughter was flatter than a deck. But at that moment, Duke Bleichroder appeared and told Well that he had a request for him. It was at the same time Ruckner's useless servant was delivering the letter of Well's passing. But just as Kurt learned that his children would inherit Well's estate, the news made the smug loser excited. However, when his wife screamed in shock, Kurt soon discovered that Well and his party had arrived outside. A few minutes later, Brantag began revealing the story of the former Duke who died in the enchanted forest with Alfred, and explained that the corpses of all the soldiers had become undead. For that reason, he told them that the king had requested they purify all the undead. But the moron banged on the table, saying that he wasn't sending any of his troops. With Erwin noticing him for the first time, he wondered who this loser was. But as Louise reminded him that he was Well's useless brother, Brantag told Kurt that they would be handling the purification task, but said that the only reason they came was to discuss how to handle the monsters they'd defeat during that process. As Kurt immediately claimed that the forest was his domain, he told them to pay tribute after converting any raw materials they acquired from the undead into coin. So as Brantag promised to do so, he told him that they intended to negotiate the rate of tribute. When Kurt asked the village chief what percentage they were supposed to receive, the chief told him 30%. But with Kurt wanting to prove that he was a real ass, he decided to ask for 50% instead. He told them to leave if they couldn't pay it, but when Herman wondered what they intended to do with the arms and armor of the purified soldiers, Brantag told him that they only intended to recover them. That made him happy, but when he tried explaining to Kurt, the dickhead told him that there was no need to recover their belongings, as he went on to say that all of their soldiers were poor. He thought their belongings were better off getting converted into raw iron for new equipment, causing Erwin to realize this loser was off his meds. When Elise offered to conduct another funeral after the purification, Kurt told her to back her ass down and said she was only after gratuities. But as Well realized just how much of a jerk his brother had become, he began wondering how he became so toxic. So that night, while they were having dinner, he asked if Kurt had always hated him so much, but Herman told him that Kurt lost all reason after he left home, as he was afraid that he would return to steal his position. At that moment, Herman's wife arrived with a pie, and as Wilma went right down to business, Marlene told Well that her grandfather was one of the undead in the forests. When Well promised to search for his belongings, Marlene grew excited and began saying that he was nothing like his useless brother Kurt. She thought he'd make a perfect heir, and even when Herman tried shushing her, she told him that it was what everyone wanted. But Lena realized Well was about to get caught in a succession battle. The next day, when they arrived at the forest, Well suggested they lure out the zombies, so as they began yelling insults at the fallen soldiers, the skies turned red and the undead began emerging from the forest. At Well's command, Elise prepared a magic circle, and as she released her mana to create a barrier, Well expanded the area of the purification spell. So just as they walked into the barrier, the spell purified them, leaving only their armor. When Erwin started to feel useless, Brantag reminded him that his job was to retrieve their belongings. But when Louise noticed a peculiar undead, Well figured that it was the general commander who was also the former duke. Right then, a wyvern appeared above, but Wilma saved Erwin from getting crushed. So as they noticed it was an undead, Erwin wondered why it wasn't getting purified by holy magic. But when it tried to attack, Wilma axed it in a single attempt. So as the magic began to purify it, Louise noticed new monsters from the expedition. But as they also got purified, a few made it through, so the party finished them off. By the time they were done, it was already morning, but when they noticed the last one, they recognized him from his armor. It was Marlene's grandfather. So as Well and Elise drew closer, the zombie asked about his granddaughter, but as Well revealed that she now had her own family, he relinquished his sword. Knowing it was over, Elise released her purification spell. After they returned their armor to the village, one of the villagers thanked Well for finally giving his son peace. But as Kurt arrived, he began commanding them to hand over the broken swords and rusted armor to the blacksmith. When the old man tried explaining that they intended to bury them in place of their dead, the mushroom head called it nonsense, and said they would use the arms to develop their land. With Well having had enough of this head, he tried asking him to leave the villagers alone. but the bastard called him a lowly adventurer and told him to get lost. So as Well wanted to silence him for good, he pulled a massive iron from his magic bag and told Kurt to accept it as a replacement. But the ass only grew angrier. After Well and his party arrived back at the house, the village chief wondered why they were still around. So Well told him that they were ordered to remain here until the owners of all the items were identified. However, the village chief had already figured out what was happening and asked if they would participate in the funerals. But the following night, after the funerals were over, he began asking Well to become the heir of their territory and said that it was the people's true desire. When Well tried saying that it was inappropriate, the village chief told him that their land had no future under his useless brother. And even when Well told him that he wanted to live as an adventurer, the man said he could leave someone in charge. Even so, Well still wouldn't accept, and tried explaining that he'd already been made the head of a different independent line, as he thought the royal palace would never allow it. However, the chief told him that this was their desire, so as Brantag appeared, he told Well that the palace wanted him to become the lord of this territory, as he explained that they had always wanted to develop a large swath of untapped land so that they would reap huge benefits. He said they had made no progress for years, so Well figured that it was due to the lords of the land being ordinary people. As Brantag told him that it was true, he said that Kurt was even worse and revealed that the palace was at their wits' end, which is why they were desperate to make Well the next lord. But since they couldn't force it to happen, Brantag explained that they had hatched a plot to make Kurt reveal just how much of a scumbag he was, so that they could easily replace him as the heir. Hearing all that, Well realized he was actually sent to provoke Kurt, so Brantag told him that purifying the undead was merely an excuse. Even though he thought Kurt's anger would only make him try to kill Well, he told him that he was keeping his eyes on him. But Well thought the entire plan would end in disaster. The following day, after he revealed everything to his friends, Louise wondered why he was unwilling to obey the order from the palace. But Herman entered at that moment, announcing that he had visitors. A few minutes later, Well was summoning a water bubble for Kurt's useless children, and just as it burst, a rainbow appeared in its place. But Louise realized that they were the reasons he wouldn't accept the royal order, because once he did, the kids would lose their future as nobles, but the village chief was spying on them all the while. That night, when a group of villagers approached the mansion, Brantag, Well, and Herman materialized before them. So as Herman wondered what was happening, the old man revealed that they intended to tell his useless father their demands. As he went on to say that they wanted Well to be the next heir, the man said he wasn't afraid of getting punished, as he revealed that Kurt was giving favorable treatment to those closest to him while wringing taxes out of everyone else. He thought Well was their only savior, and said they decided to move into action after learning that he intended to leave the village within a few days. But Well wondered who was peddling the rumor. Right then, Brantag noticed the village chief spying on them, and having figured that he was the rumor peddler, he met him while he was sneaking away, and wondered why he was stirring up the others while staying away from the mess. He thought he was mischievous, and told him that the royal palace wouldn't trust anyone with a horrendous face like his. But the man told him that he was a simple village chief, and warned him to be careful around Kurt's wife. That same night, a few villagers warned Kurt about Well's actions, saying that he intended to turn the rest of the villagers to him. But as these words made the melon head angry, he threatened to punish everyone. Meanwhile, Well was wondering what would happen if he became the lord, so Brantag told him that Kurt's ugly ass would be erased. So the following morning, Well decided to visit the asshole, and asked if he could receive some of the land after he became lord, as he offered to help him raise his rank in return, and to provide funds to develop the land. He thought this would help the villagers enjoy a good life, and would even save their family from continuing down the line of brokies. But Kurt ripped apart his proposal. As he began saying that he wouldn't be swindled, he called it a plot to steal his authority. And when Well tried explaining that it was the only way to save his family from the rebellion, he knocked off the cups, and told him to kiss his white ass. Just as Well left, he noticed Kurt's wife and her children. So a few minutes later, after Well explained everything to her, and said he didn't know what else to do, Amelie admitted that she'd been sticking close to him so that she could appeal to his emotions for her children to keep their noble status. She told him that they were the most important things to her, and said she'd do anything to protect them. Later that day, Well decided to tell his friends that he'd decided to become the next lord, and even though he thought half of the villagers would hate him, he was willing to carry on anyway, but said he wouldn't follow the royal palace's intentions. So the following day, he began selling new items at the village market, while Louise sold new clothes from the capital. At the same time, Lena was selling new crafts, but Erwin sold new tools to the farmers. However, Kurt was angry after learning what happened, and his few supporters told him that they were growing bankrupt. But when they were returning home at night, Well appeared before them, and just as they tried to run away, they realized they were surrounded. The next morning, one of them managed to tell Kurt that the others had betrayed them, but as Kurt thought they were threatened by magic, the moron told him that they actually weren't. At the same time, Well was telling Rodrich that he managed to win them over by offering to train them in the capital, so that they would learn more about their craft, and Rodrich thought it was brilliant. That evening, Kurt realized that no one showed up for the village meeting, so as the meathead told him that they were now in support of Well, he revealed that Well had also given him an offer to train in the capital, and ran off. So that night, just as Kurt was about to head out on a killing spree, Ruckner's useless servant appeared in the forest. As he showed him a magic item, he told him that it was called the Dragon's Flute, and said it would certainly kill Well. When Kurt wondered how much he was charging for it, the man told him that it was for free, but asked that he show them favor after taking charge of the undeveloped lands. So Kurt thought it was a perfect deal. The following day, when Brantag sensed Kurt's presence in the forest, he told the group that the asshole was coming. But when Lena wondered if their fake rumor managed to reach him, Brantag reminded them that their plan was to make him blow up. However, when they began wondering why he was coming alone, Brantag told them that he could have found some chance of beating Well without any help. But a few minutes later, when Well met him, he asked him why he was here, but Kurt had already figured out that his party was hiding, and told them to reveal themselves. When they decided to do so, the deranged psychopath began telling Well that he was amazing for everything he managed to do, but said he'd always be the 8th son. So as he revealed his dragon's flute, threatening to blow it, Brantag explained to Well that he could summon dozens of dragons with it. He said that every dragon in the Rieg Mountains would rush towards them, and that even their magic wouldn't be enough to stop them. So Kurt told them that he was the only one safe from the magic item. Afraid for the villagers, Elise tried warning him that the dragons would annihilate them, but Kurt told her that they deserved it for betraying him, and said even his own family would suffer. His intention was to steal Well's assets, and to take charge of the undeveloped lands, so he revealed that he would easily have a new family. Just as he tried to blow the flute, Brantag shot a blast that repelled on it, but when Kurt realized it was unbroken, he said victory was his. So as he began playing the flute, a mystical aura started oozing from it, and just as the skies turned, malicious spirits began swirling around him. As Wilma stopped Well from getting closer, she told him that she had a bad feeling about it, so Lena revealed that the spirit was Malice. At the same time, Brantag began explaining that the dragon's flute was a legendary magic item that couldn't be easily obtained, and said that Kurt was tricked into accepting the Flute of Malice instead, because although it drew in malicious spirits from the surroundings and gave its user powers to defeat his enemy, their soul would eventually be converted into a ghoul. Hearing these words, Well realized his useless brother was f***ed, so as the asshole continued playing the flute, he turned into an undead. With Well in shock at the sight, Brantag tried telling him to use his holy magic to purify it, but just before it could attack, Elise unleashed her holy magic. However, when she couldn't overpower the undead, Well decided to support her, and told her to expand the purification magic. As they did so, their combined magic consumed it, and its fragment exploded. However, a fragment of Kurt's soul flew towards the capital, and while Ruckner and his group of schmucks were having a dinner party, it crashed through their window. Just as Ruckner recognized Kurt, the fragment consumed them all. The following morning, after Well learned everything that happened, Rodrich explained that a fragment of the Malice was guided here by Kurt's hatred, and said it would be dangerous to have Amelie and her children live in the capital. As Well agreed that they would be considered the family of a criminal, Rodrich told him that their lives would only be a living hell. So a few days later, after Amelie and her children began living with Herman, Well told Brantag and Brock that the villagers still hated them, and said he was disappointed that he couldn't save a single person. Wanting to distract him, Brock revealed that they found no lead on the flute, but Brantag thought it was all part of the palace's plot. That night, after their dinner, Well tried asking Elise if he seemed out of touch with reality, so when she told him that he felt far away even though he was close, he thought it was due to the fact that he had not accepted this world. He told her that he would try to become a proper noble, so she told him to do his best. The following week, while he was at the palace, the king announced that he was being granted all the undeveloped lands, and asked if he wanted something else for a reward. So as Well began saying that he had always wanted to ask for something, he requested for the right to grant 2 open titles, but all the nobles were shocked at this request. As the king reminded him that he was the only one who had the right to grant titles, the Lord Marshal called it an insolent request, and said that allowing him to take charge over the large swath of land was already unthinkable. As Hohenheim told Well to rescind the request, the Lord Marshal went on to tell the king that the domain should be granted to someone else. When the commissioner tried explaining that Well's magic was important for developing the land, the Lord Marshal tried offering someone else, but they soon realized that he was the Marshal's relation. As the Duke decided to butt in, he reminded them that someone else other than the king was once granted the right to bestow titles on others, but Hohenheim told him that it was a case with pressing reasons. However, when the Duke began saying that Well's request should also be considered, the Lord Marshal thought he was supporting him because he was his Duke, so Brock told Well to rescind his request. He told him that his reckless actions had upset the order of the royal palace and said he lacked a noble's decorum, but as the king shut them all up, he affirmed that Well would develop the lands, as he reminded them that the development of the undeveloped lands was their kingdom's greatest priority. He said they needed him to put his full effort into it, so he bestowed Well with the right to grant 2 titles. In addition, he granted Well the 5th rank and the title of Count, so Well recited the pledge to serve the people. When he visited Amelie and her children, he swore to give her children the noble's titles he obtained today. But just as he was about to leave, she asked him not to worry about Kurt's death anymore. By the following week, they had begun clearing the lands, and Rodrich directed Well to clear another area, explaining that Hohenheim intended to build a church on it. All the nobles had taken a portion for themselves, but as the others began arriving at that moment, each with a request of their own, Well realized he was reincarnated into hell. At the very least, he now finally had someone to come back home to, and would never have to worry about choking on meat anymore, as he now had 4 bitches to choke on his meat. Make sure to click the link in my description or scan the QR code to download Silver and Blood Requiem, and immerse yourself in the most epic vampire experience, where strategic gameplay meets stunning 2D visuals in a world of eternal darkness. Blood memories awaken, the path home begins. Take part in a fun little web quiz, find out if your blood is black, silver, or red, and win some awesome in-game prizes. Watch this next video. Till next time, my fellow legendary plot masters.